Welcome to the ComedySportz Podcast, starring your host, Christine Rollo Capriolo. And now, the funniest man in show business, Tom the Clarkster Clark.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the ComedySportz Podcast. Today, we have a wonderful guest star all the way in town from L.A. sitting right in front of me. It's Tom Clark. Thanks for coming, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
This is awesome.
Yes, it is.
The last time I saw you, we did a weird little comedy reunion at the high school we both went to.
Yep, at Pius XI.
That's right.
And yeah, we did a half-filled auditorium.
Half is generous. It was
a quarter filled. But it was a lovely auditorium. And then we did improv and some stand-up. And
It was lovely.
Yeah.
So you make your way back to Milwaukee every once in a while, right? Your dad's still here?
My dad's still here. He's 93. So he, I try to get back here a few times a year. And then we usually put on a couple shows. I do stand-up. Mm-hmm. So I do, we just did Rounding Third last night.
Okay.
And I love coming back. I mean, I miss Milwaukee. Will always be my hometown.
Oh, that's great. So that's where you're from. You're born and raised in Milwaukee?
Born and raised right by the stadium, 49th and Blue Mound.
Nice.
414 till I die.
That's the tattoo on your arm I see right now. Very nice. Right. Okay. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to play football. That was my
really?
goal. I played football all through grade school, high school, college.
Okay.
And then the dream fell apart slowly at each level. But yeah, it was just football was just, the brutality of the game. So then I decided to go into comedy after college.
Where did you go to college?
St. Norbert.
Oh, my parents went to St. Norbert.
Oh, really?
Small world. Yes, they did. They met each other with my dad crawling in the window late to class. Uh-huh. And my mom looked at him and said, "Who's that guy?" And they're married for 47 years now.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, St. Norbert it's all about love. Sweet Catholic love.
What sweet Catholic love. What did you major in?
International Studies and Spanish.
International Studies in Spanish.
Yeah, and that's actually what got me into comedy so I never did any sort of performance anything until when I went to Mexico. After college, I didn't know what I was going to do, so I decided to I decided to volunteer in Mexico through this Catholic organization called the Salesians, and I worked with kids in gangs, like hardcore
in
gang
Mexico?
members in Juarez.
Wow.
And I started, I would play guitar for them, and I would, I was like, really, these were like tough kids.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what won them over was me playing guitar. And I'd never like really come out of my shell before. I'm like, well, if I can make these guys laugh, and these are hardcore gang members, right, I could probably do comedy. So that was sort of the beginning of sort of my career was after that experience.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That is true.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
so then how did you hear about ComedySportz? You didn't do it in high school?
Never did it in high school. I always thought it was dumb.
Okay.
Because I just thought, like, what is ComedySportz? Like, what is it? Like, to me, the name still doesn't work for me because it's just like, it still doesn't make sense to an outsider because it's like ComedySportz. Like, what are they playing basketball funny?
Like the Globetrotters? What is this?
Yeah, so it never made sense to me. And then, so I always just thought it was kind of dumb. And I guess just being sort of, I wasn't a jock, but I wasn't like, I was still sort of with that group.
Right. So you were the cool kids.
I was not cool, but I was more football oriented or athletics oriented and playing. Okay. Doing that seemed silly. So
you'd heard of it though.
So I'd heard of it. Okay. I saw them. I remember they performed at one of our athletic banquets, and it seemed brutal just to have to perform at a banquet for a bunch of jocks.
That does sound brutal.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember seeing them in college and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't until I took an acting class. I came back here. I decided I'd take this acting class, and I remember I was in the class, and the teacher, like, it was like one of those weird acts where you have to crawl around on the ground and pretend you're a lion and all this stuff. And I was doing some monologue or something he had me reading. He's like, you're going to need speech therapy. And I was like, what? Like, he's like, you're not ready. And I was like, so he's like very insulting. I was like, I hate this. Like, I had like signed up for a 6-week class, and I think I went to 2 weeks. But this woman in the class said, oh, you should try ComedySportz. Like, you're funny. It's like, you should maybe do ComedySportz. So I went, and John Polesnik was my teacher my first session. I mean, I fell in love with it, like, immediately. Like, it was so much fun and so freeing and so, like, you know, it's like one of those things when you first start doing comedy or improv in general, you just sort of get like addicted. Like
totally.
My brother had taken classes, so we'd play the games with each other, and we'd get together at people's houses, and we'd work on the games.
Yeah.
So it was just like such a mind blowing experience to go through that, and John was such a great teacher. So every Saturday morning, I think it was, we would go in, and Michael D'Acquisto.
Yeah, Michael D'Acquisto.
And I think Scott Delaney.
Hey, yo, Shiganini.
Yeah. Dave Bogan, I think, was in my, sort of in that group. We were all doing the workshops, and we just, it was just so much fun. And it wasn't really organized at that point. It was just sort of, we had our main company. Yeah. And that was it. So the only shows were like the workshop shows you would do every 6 or 7 weeks. So what year are we talking about? Do you know? I started doing stand-up in 94, and I think I started doing ComedySportz probably right after that, probably 95. Oh, okay. But pretty close together. I was doing both stand-up and improv. And improv helped my stand-up so much. How's that? Just because it taught me to trust myself. Like one book, like later on I had Kurt Scholler as my teacher, who was also great. And I think he told me about a book called Impro with Keith Johnstone, and it was just sort of about, the thing I really got out of that book was that everything you say is the right thing to say in that moment. So don't doubt yourself. And I think that really helped with stand-up because you stopped blocking yourself. You just said it, and sometimes you'd be wrong, but it doesn't matter. Like if you just sort of go 100%, this is the right thing to say, it does help a lot. So, so I really, that book really helped me a lot. Oh, that's awesome. Starting out. But I think within a year and a half, I started doing shows at ComedySportz. I got in the main company. And, and I mean, I was splitting my time basically doing stand-up and improv and then working a full-time job too. But I loved it. So going from, you said you started with stand-up first. Right. Which is just you alone on stage. Right. And then going to ComedySportz, you have a team. You have a group of people around you, and you're all working together. Right. So talk about how can that, working with that team, how did that open up your eyes with something in stand-up? They seem like very different things. I've never done stand-up. Really? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think later on I learned that the audience in stand-up is sort of your improv partner. Oh. So you can use the audience to sort of, like sometimes they're bad improvisers, sometimes they're great improvisers. Yeah. If you sort of go with the audience, like I do a lot of crowd work and stuff, so I find that fun because I don't really attack audience members. I kind of bring them into the show. I try to make them, the theme of improv is to make each other look good. Yeah. So I kind of do that with my stand-up. Is like I don't consider anything an attack. I consider it like a gift. Yeah. So I think that helps a lot. And then I think just when I got into improv, I was actually more comfortable because it's like, well, I've got these other people that can sort of save me if something's going south. So to me, improv was so much easier than doing stand-up because, you're just up there by myself. And I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do on stage as a stand-up at that point. But improv sort of helped me open up sort of those boundaries of not limiting myself to just jokes. Like I can do something silly or I could do something sort of, like I was big into Steve Martin and Andy Kaufman. So you sort of learn like, oh, that's a lot of improv sort of training. Yeah. So I really, that helped me a lot. And you still do both? I still do both. I'm still in ComedySportz in LA. So you moved to LA in 01? In 01. Okay. And then, let's see. I went out there and pretty much, I think in the first 6 months I joined ComedySportz. I had to still go through the audition process. Okay. But I got in, I think, in 02. And then, and then I was pretty active in that. I still do the high school league stuff. I teach at a few high schools. I actually taught Jessica Williams who's on The Daily Show.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so you meet so many like people that end up becoming like famous.
Yeah.
Like Ari Stidham, who was on Scorpion. I worked with him in high school.
Okay.
Kimmy Abapornia, who's on she's on the new Mad About You show.
I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But she's, so it's just like all these kids that you work with
Yeah.
coming out there just sort of like shooting past you like a rocket ship.
Well, so your goal going out to LA, was your goal to continue doing stand-up? Or did you want to get into TV? And
I wanted to get into acting and
Okay.
stuff. So yeah, the thing was to do more stand-up. I don't know if I had like a specific goal. Like I wasn't like, I'm going to get a sitcom or anything like that. I was just like, I want to be on the TV and movie side of things and do that sort of stuff and still do my stand-up and still travel around. And
Right.
the first few years were kind of tough because it was like, you got to make a living out there. So I'd sometimes come back here for a month and do stand-up and do shows around Chicago and Milwaukee and just make money and then go back.
Oh,
so
okay.
there was the first few years where, I'd be gone a lot.
Yeah.
Just to survive, pay for the apartment and all that stuff.
Right. Now, what did you notice as the difference from LA ComedySportz and Milwaukee ComedySportz?
I think it's like Milwaukee's very. I always think it's like Caddyshack. It's like the scene where they're at the pool and it's like where it's like caddies allowed in for like from 1:15 to 1:30.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like what ComedySportz is like. It's just kind of. We welcome everyone. It's like the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, your
You're weak,
smelly,
you're oppressed.
all that. And that's sort of like comedy just embraces everybody.
Right.
They just sort of, and LA was a little more theatrical, so it was a little more, like we don't do thine and Shakespeare, or they, like thyest, like we sort of make Shakespeare, but they're like they don't say that in Shakespeare, so they wanted it more proper, and like singing was a big thing, so that was very new because we hardly,
don't do singing in Milwaukee.
Yeah, so that
Not
was
for
a huge
years.
thing.
Yeah.
So, but it was good to learn that side of it because you learn sort of like that. There's a lot of comedy in playing the theater of improv.
Yeah.
So that was a big change for me.
Okay.
Not as many remotes as they have out here. Remotes are,
Right.
the touring shows and stuff. So you couldn't make as much money that way.
In LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different. So I kind of like sort of the blue collar approach of Milwaukee ComedySportz as opposed to sort of the I don't know, hoity-toity sort of LA
Really? Okay.
approach. I feel like, it's ultimately the same show.
Oh, sure.
When you get in the arena, but it's like,
But there's definitely differences.
but the attitude in LA compared to Milwaukee is definitely a little bit different.
Now, have you performed in other cities as well?
I'm trying to think if I've done anywhere else. No, I think just LA and Milwaukee.
LA and Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But you travel all over the country
Right.
with your stand-up. And you've even done Conan O'Brien.
I was on Conan a few years ago. I got to be on Conan, which was a dream of mine.
Yeah.
That was one of my big things, was to be on Conan.
How did that happen?
It's one of those things, like it was a lot of, I wrote a blog about it, but it was sort of like a very long process. They saw me in Chicago at the Chicago Comedy Festival in like 98.
Okay.
And I was just brand new. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you're great. We'd like to have you on the show. Send us a tape. So I didn't know what to send. So I sent them this long tape. You're supposed to send them like 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I never heard anything. So then I tried again, like 10 years later. I sent another tape and they said, oh, this 2.5 minutes is good. We need another 2 minutes. Send another tape. And I never did. So it was like, I kind of like would stop the process because I was like, oh, I just want to get on the show.
Yeah.
And finally in 2015, like, I got married in, what year did we get married? 2014? 2014, I think we got married. 2015. Yes. January 2015. So we got married. I met my wife, Steph, and she sort of is just like, you should be on that show. It's like you
Yeah.
just have to put the time into it. So
Right.
that's when I sort of dedicated my time, and I would send him my set. And he's like, we like this 2 minutes, send
Yeah.
us another tape and we'll figure out the other 2.5 minutes. And then I sent it in again and he's like, oh yeah, I like this. This is a good 2.5. So this is your 4.5 minute set. Can you record this? Give us the 4.5, 5 minute tape.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. If it's good, we'll be good to go. So that took, so each step in the process takes like 1 or 2 months to really get a good tape, because I want to make sure the audience response is there. I don't want to just send something.
Right.
So it took about 6 months to go through the whole process. And and then I just got a call one morning, actually, and they're like, "Hey, can you do it today?"
Right now.
Yeah. One of the we have one of our panelists dropped out. If you could do it today, then you're in. It was actually my mother-in-law's birthday, and we just were like, I was like, asked my wife, like, should we do this? And she's like, yeah, let's go. And so I didn't have any time to really think about it. I knew that they were going to give me a date, but I wasn't expecting it like 2 weeks later.
Right.
And then just went down there, and it was awesome. I mean, it was just such a...
Do you remember it, or were you just so nervous?
No, I remember it pretty well. I remember I have a friend who does audience warm up there, so he was like giving me advice. Like, oh yeah, you should come out, stand by the band, and when I'm doing warm up, I'll introduce you, and the audience will feel like you're like a celebrity.
Okay.
And it's like, and I'll get to see you. And I was like, oh, it was right. It was like the audience was craning their necks to see who I was. But there was a moment when we were doing it, and my mom wasn't doing well. My mom passed a few months after that, but but it was right before her birthday. I think September 28th we shot it, and her birthday's on the 12th, and I'm sitting there, I'm watching the band warm up the audience, I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, it's finally happening. And Steph's mom comes over to me, and she's like, Tom, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to say something going to make me cry. And she's like, Tom, do you think you could get us a t-shirt? And it sort of took the pressure out. I was like, oh, this isn't really that big of a deal. Like, I'm making it a big deal in my mind. She wants a free t-shirt.
She wants a t-shirt.
Yeah. Clearly, we're on different levels of how meaningful. Of course, it's
a big deal in your mind.
Right. But it did sort of took the relief out of it.
Okay.
And I know some of the writers there, and they came over and they all said hi to me. Like, they said, oh, good luck, we're excited. And, even afterwards, they said, oh, Conan kept making I have a joke about cholos from my experience in Mexico. Yeah. And he said, Conan kept saying the cholos, churros line all day. So that was cool to hear that, like, he liked it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was just, I was really happy. TV sets are always kind of what if, or I wish I would have done that. But I didn't feel any of that.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, oh, that was exactly the way I wanted it to go.
That it went how you wanted. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So no regrets. It was great.
No, it was so much fun.
Now you travel all over the country doing your stand-up.
I do. I travel. I actually been to South Africa as well. I did.
South Africa? Doing your stand-up?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
It was like 2007, and somebody asked for a CD of mine. They lived in South Africa, and he's like, oh yeah. I was like, sure, I'll send you a CD.
Have he seen you here or something?
I guess he just heard me like on XM or something, and then I sent him it, and he's like, you should come out here and perform. I was like, well, I don't know how I would, and he's like, you should go to this festival, Cape Town Comedy Festival, and I just emailed the festival off the website, and the guy's like, yeah, I like your clips, send us a video, and I was like, so it costs like $25. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And then they're like, we'd like to make an offer to you. And I was like, an offer? Like, I was just thinking like I'd have to fly myself out. But they're like, they made this huge offer. And
Really?
And I was just like, all right. And I was there for 4 weeks. I did shows every night at a theater.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was with Bert Kreischer. He was in the other theater.
Okay.
So it was like somebody from U.S., England, Australia, and a couple South African comedians.
Oh wow!
And Canada. So it was like an international festival, and it was just so amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and just to spend 4 weeks in South Africa.
What an incredible experience.
Yeah, that's something I never thought would happen.
Right.
But,
so, what's your favorite then? If you had to do one more show, ComedySportz, like an improv show, or stand up? Do you have a preference?
I mean, like last night's show, I really liked. I like when it's. I mean, I had a lot of friends that obviously came out, but I love sort of like the grungy settings of like a 90-seat, 100-seat place where people are kind of on top of each other. It's not fancy or anything. I sort of like those settings. So, and I like that because I can also do improv. Like I did a short sketch at the top with what's his name? what was the guy's? I mean, Scott Tulaney, and then there's another guy who helped us out last minute, and I'm gonna forget his name. Falancer, what was his name? I forgot his name. He was wearing a very nice sweater.
It was a nice sweater.
It's supposed to be Joe Gradiznik was supposed to do it, and then he had to drop out last minute.
Okay.
So the other guy jumped in. Rick Fancher? I don't know. But anyways, he helped us out. But it was two Comedy Sports guys. So it was fun. They just jumped in there, and he just jumped in last minute because he wanted, because he's like, oh, yeah.
Because he wanted a T-shirt.
Probably wanted a T-shirt.
Yeah.
He did not get a T-shirt. But yeah, he jumped in. So that's like the great thing about Comedy Sports people is like they just don't ask a lot. I mean, they don't ask many questions. They're just kind of like, yeah,
sure,
let's do
I'm
it.
in.
So it was just nice. And that's what I love, I think, is like where it's that combination. Because for me, it's like I love when stand-up and improv kind of come together. Yeah. But I do like sort of being the focal point. So I guess that's the other part. So I'd say stand-up.
Yeah. How do you think you talked about how improv has helped your stand-up. Has stand-up helped you in improv, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those end games like 185 and Hey Waiter and that sort of thing, like those are all very like confidence-based, silly. I mean, it's like it's all in the delivery and your confidence and how much you don't care or do care or whatever. So I think that does help a lot. I find like when I'm doing like long form, like I end up doing a lot of like when I perform with Old Milwaukee.
I was going to ask, do you do Old Milwaukee?
Yeah,
right?
with like Eric Price and Kurt Scholler and Peter Alberts and Brian Allman and Dave Tooney.
Yeah.
And a lot of our scenes end up turning into me on a stage, like at a podium, making a speech or and them in the audience. So it sort of becomes like stand-up. So I feel like those guys are good at like knowing what my strengths are and making it. So I think it definitely does help.
Yeah.
And I sometimes maybe get a little in my head more than improvisers. Like I think a little bit more.
Okay.
But yeah, I think stand-up definitely does help.
How do you talk yourself down after you've had a bad show in either one?
I just had one. I had to do like a private party for in California, and it was just sort of like we want clean. It has to be very clean.
Okay.
Very clean. It was stand-up. And there were kids there, and the guy like who booked me was like sitting in front, like very intensely watching me, like not like, do not say anything inappropriate. So that was.
He had a whip. He was ready to get you.
It was just like, so I just that was raw. I like called my wife. I'm like, I've never had like I was this close to a panic attack I've ever had where it was like, and I'm like, what am I worried about? I was just like. And a club owner had booked me on it, so I was kind of worried because I didn't want to let him down. But I was like really worried. Plus, they weren't very welcoming, so I was kind of like, so I don't know. So I that show didn't go well, and I was just like, I told Steph after the show, like, it didn't go that well, and she's like, all right, whatever. It's just
got to brush it off.
Yeah, it's just like you just realize it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you. We talk because Steph's my wife's a comic, so we always talk about that. If you have a great set, nothing happens. If you have a bad set, nothing happens.
It's just
so
go to the next
cares?
one, right?
Yeah, it's just you can't get too high or too low after a show, and nothing happens either way. So it's like, I mean, something might happen down the road, but it's like you can't put that much weight on any one show.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. I guess that's probably the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Comedy Sports game?
I love Blind Line. I think Blind Line's. Yeah, Blind Line or Day in the Life is fun for me. I like more of that open concept. That's like the closest we get to like more of an open framework for our scenes. Or like a Silent Tension is fun.
That's a great one.
Yeah, so I think those three are probably like I like scene games more than anything. I like Spelling Bee. I think is funny. I remember we used to do it more as like Southern rednecks.
I totally remember
like
that. Yes.
Super politically incorrect.
Totally.
It was like, I think that was, that was the other thing about Comedy Sportz Milwaukee was it was very like politically incorrect without really knowing what political correctness was. Oh my God. I mean, I don't know if they've talked about, remember the wimping foul?
Yes.
We had a foul called the wimping foul, which was like if you didn't commit to like something like, let's go to the bank. Maybe we can. It's like, and then the ref would blow the whistle, wimping foul. And the wimping foul was a limp wrist.
Yes.
And
This makes me think of Mr. Roper on Three's Company.
Right. Yes. We got rid of that because it just wasn't appropriate.
It wasn't appropriate.
But I remember they also had the waffling foul, which was that one was waffling. Yeah,
waffling, like you kind of shake your hands out in front of you.
Yeah, and that was if the scene wasn't going anywhere, which was brutal. Like that was like getting a note in the middle of your scene, like waffling foul. The scene has to start going somewhere, players, and it's
you
like
all suck right now.
Exactly. It was like that was a terrible foul.
Talk about getting in your head, then, right?
Oh my God, yeah. It's like you're not doing well, players.
You guys shouldn't be on stage, but we're gonna leave you on stage.
Keep going. Oh my God, yeah. Those were. I'm glad they just dropped it to the Groner and the brown bag.
Groner and brown bag, yeah.
That was the other thing with the LA and Milwaukee is Milwaukee was prop heavy, like
it used
wigs.
To be. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, but back in the day it was like wigs and jackets and just all these just disgusting props.
And all the same wigs and jackets are still sitting there.
Right.
It's so nasty.
Yeah. Oh my God. Put those under a microscope.
Well, PJ, who used to be the stage manager, used to have the task of having to wash all those things.
Oh my God. Well, at least he washed them.
He did. Every once in a while they would go through the wash machine. But I think I was just there last night. I did a show and I kept looking at this one outfit and I'm like, oh my God. I think like one of the Dead Alewives wore that. I mean, it was so just there for so long, and the wigs are all gnarled and.
Right, I know. There's a like a butcher apron. I don't know if it's still there, but it's covered in blood. It's real blood, and it's Bo Johnson's blood from when Peter Alberts did a scene where he was like pretending he was blind and he throws a punch, but his eyes are literally closed.
And
like
he really did throw a punch.
And he did throw a punch, and he hit Bo square in the nose, and just blood everywhere. And then they were just shoving props on his nose so
stop it from
bleeding. Yeah,
and that probably was never washed, and I probably wore that last night.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's there's some diseases on it, so
that's so nasty.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, I think that was one thing was weird. Was like, well, how am I going to pretend I'm a girl if I don't have a wig?
Right? How could I do that? Yeah. Oh my God, I feel like you're right. It used to be very prop heavy, and then I remember there was like a turning point where it was like you shouldn't rely on props.
Right.
And a lot of the high school league kids would rely on props.
Yeah.
And then very rarely do I see them actually used.
Right.
So that's interesting how those things change.
Yeah, because you'd spend a lot of time looking for
right.
props, or you'd run backstage and start digging through a chest and you'd have no idea what's happening in the scene.
But, and then you realize, there's nothing you can contribute.
But I will be a ship captain in this scene.
Damn it, because I found this coat.
Right. Yeah.
Where did your nickname, the Clarkster, come from? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think it was just the easiest thing. I think it was maybe from the Hulkster, from Hulkamania, but it wasn't very original. I have a joke now in my act where I say I'm doing my one-man show, and the show is called "Turn on the Lights." It's Clark in here. So now I feel like, that would have been a good name. Something with the Clarkness or darkness, something like that. But I don't know who gave it to me. I think it was maybe PJ just sort of announced it that day.
Yeah.
He's like, "What do you want your nickname to be?" And I think I was just like, I never really gave it much thought, I guess, because I never had nicknames growing up.
Okay. Well, nicknames are usually given.
Yeah.
So that's why I always like to ask, because some people have a really great story, their origin story of their nickname. And some people like you, like, I don't know, PJ said it one day and it sort of stuck.
Yeah.
You never know.
I used to get Griswold because Clark W. Griswold from Vacation.
National Lampoons.
Yeah. So maybe sometimes Griswold, but
okay.
Clark Bar, but those are like the two heaviest ones
that you remember
Yeah.
using. So we're going to play a couple games here before we close.
Okay.
All right. I've got an envelope here. I'm going to pull out these papers full of names of Comedy Sports games. I want you to pull out 2 of the games.
Okay.
All right. And if you had to do a show right now, which game would you rather play? And I was going to ask you, because you do stand up. Do you like the 185 and those games where it's very joke?
Yeah, I sort of took when I was doing, I would do like a very eclectic sort of like, sometimes I would do like anti-jokes and I think, I sort of thought it was ridiculous, sort of the game, but I kind of get a kick out of it. I don't know. Now I sort of enjoy trying to find the puns in there and
pun games.
Yeah, but I think when I would do it, I would do sort of like anti-jokes.
Yeah.
Or I would just get up there and be like, because it's blue. It's sort of like a Norm Macdonald take on it.
Right.
And but those were fun too.
How would you describe your comedy style?
I get Norm Macdonald a lot just because of my voice, but I was never like a big Norm Macdonald fan. I was always a Steve Martin fan, but I'm sure Norm loves Steve Martin too. But
Sure.
But yeah, I get Norm Macdonald's voice a lot.
Okay.
That's probably the main one. Brian Regan a little bit, Jim Gaffigan a little bit. So those are probably the three I get. But Steve Martin is my biggest influence of everyone.
If you had a chance to meet him?
I probably wouldn't want to.
You wouldn't want to?
I feel like he'd be kind of a jerk.
What?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I think he's just very, he's so smart and he's so sort of above it all that I feel like he would be a hard person to just talk to.
Really?
I feel like he'd just be like, okay, are we done talking yet?
Are we through yet, kid?
Yeah.
I'm over it.
Yeah, I feel like, but who knows? Maybe
someday, or maybe you just want to leave it.
I just probably want to leave it at a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've met Aaron Rodgers. That's enough.
You met Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers?
I did.
How did that happen?
I was doing, a friend of mine was doing red carpet at the Guys' Choice Awards for Spike TV when that was a network.
Okay.
And I was doing the camera work for him. And then I see Aaron Rodgers is at this event, which I did not know he was going to be there. And I'm just like, oh my God. And he's like walking by himself. He has no entourage. It was right after they won the Super Bowl. And
no entourage right after the Super
Bowl.
Bowl.
Agents, no like publicist or anything.
Yeah.
And then he just came over and he interviewed with my friend. We talked about video games and I was like asking questions. And I like wandered from behind the camera to in front and I got this picture with him.
Nice guy?
So nice.
Yeah.
Like such a nice guy. And I was like, I'm so stupid because I was like, I went to St. Norbert where they have training camp. Like I should have brought that up. And I think I was just too, like that was probably the most starstruck.
With Aaron Rodgers,
really? Yeah, he's so, and he lives in LA and sort of lives near where we live. So
do you go by his house every once in a while, just wave?
Yeah, yes.
Remember me?
Yeah, it's like he lives there, and then Christian Yelich lives in the same area. We live in Agora Hills, and then Christian Yelich lives in Westlake. So it's like I'm always hoping to see him. So I'm always wearing my Brewer shirt or my
with your Packers hat, your Brewer shirt, like your Badgers pants.
Right. It's pretty pathetic. Yeah. Yeah. Let me check out these.
All right, so what are the two games you picked?
All right, I picked Dr. Know-It-All.
Okay.
An Oscar-winning moment.
All right, talk about those. What do you think?
I do love Dr. Know-It-All. I like that. I like that it gets an audience volunteer involved.
Okay.
So I always enjoy that aspect when you get an audience member involved.
Well, you said the same thing with your stand-up. You like to bring the audience
in. Yeah.
That's
so I kind of enjoy that. Oscar-winning moment. I haven't played that enough, but I do think that's when it's executed well. I mean, that can be really fun.
Absolutely.
But I haven't really played Oscar-winning moment enough. But I think I would like to play that if I had other people that had played it. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
And they kind of knew the little
shtick.
Maybe the things that make it work. Like what makes Oscar-winning moment work for you?
I have barely played that one, but I know sometimes it's explained differently and almost like soap opera. Like when they go into an Oscar-winning moment, sometimes like people will step into the box and there's the light,
right? Versus
just performing it in the middle of a scene naturally,
right?
So when it works, like you said, when someone's really truly just in the middle of a scene and giving this, dramatic but yet comedic speech, I think it works well. I don't like the whole setup of kind of like the soap opera thing where they go into the box.
Yeah, I think
they just so overly exaggerate this ridiculous story. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think it should be more like a scene in a movie.
Yeah, like a natural flow during the scene on stage. Then it works brilliantly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if you can have music or whatever, if you have a really good musician, like that's one thing with ComedySportz in LA is the musician. I mean, not that we didn't really. Eventually, we got sort of musicians, but for a long time, it was just somebody pressing a key on the keyboard, and then that was it. But in LA, the musicians there are just. Scott Passarella, I'll say his name. He's like one of the best. Just the way he can fall into different genres. And Alan Simpson was. He'd think he does some stuff for The Simpsons now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're they just sort of blow me away. Jonathan Dinerstein's another guy. But yeah, the musicians at ComedySportz in LA are just some of the best.
That's one thing I wish Milwaukee would bring back because we used to have Paula Foley. and years ago, and then Esther
Jen.
Yeah, Esther Jen was there, and I think I started and she was there, but then she was gone. And I do remember playing some shows though where you would have that backup, the musician just being another character in the scene, improvising on the keyboard, and that's amazing. And we haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah. That's why, one thing I also like that with Milwaukee Comedy, especially when we had Roger Hubba Hebner.
Roger Hebner, R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. But he all the sound effects stuff was always fun, and how he would help you out.
Yes.
In the scene, and he would throw in stuff.
Well, that's when, like I said, that's when the booth was like another character in the show.
Yeah.
It was a part of the show, and you could all work together and work off each other.
Yeah, I like that old setup of the ComedySportz back when it was on Jefferson.
Jefferson Street.
Yeah, that was like the big one. It was like huge.
It looked like a big basement.
Yeah,
that big warehouse.
Yeah, it was such a like that's one thing. That's also with Milwaukee and LA is like just the space that ComedySportz has in Milwaukee. Like I don't think people really fully appreciate the luxury that you guys have of like this is a giant space. Like to get a space like this in LA would cost millions and millions of dollars. And it's like for you guys it's like nothing. Like and to have a bar
and restaurant.
Like that's I think that's one thing like a lot of people don't appreciate about being in their town is like you guys have this great thing. Like don't take it for granted.
Right.
Because you go to LA or New York and it's just like everything's like we scrape for space, we scrape to get alcohol if we want to have, alcohol at the event or whatever. So you really do have this. And plus I think there's more opportunities to put on shows at the theaters.
Right.
So I think that's one thing I would say to anyone who's in ComedySportz is put on your own show there. Like don't be in such a hurry to move to LA or New York. Like you can do shows in your hometown, invite friends, and figure out what you're doing before you get out there. Because this is your chance to sort of experiment and figure things out. So
well, and there's a lot of that's what's changed too over the years. Like when I started doing ComedySportz after Madison and came back to Milwaukee, it was just ComedySportz.
Right.
But now there are all these different improv groups popping up. And like you said, people doing their own show. Like, hey, what's this group of people? We'll get together and we'll do this show. We'll call it this. And they'll rent out the space at ComedySportz.
Right.
And they'll, do it in the garage space. And there's a lot of groups now. And that's really refreshing to see.
Yeah. Because when I started, I was in the Dead Alewives after Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub left.
Yeah.
And it was either ComedySportz or Dead Alewives.
Right,
that was it.
Yes.
There was no other groups. And then I think eventually, I feel like Mike Kaus group, like them doing the Gentleman's Hour,
Gentleman's Hour was great.
Spawned some other people to kind of start doing their own thing. And I love those guys. Are all so funny and talented. And that's what was great about the Dead Alewives. Like when I started, that was the other big change for me was when I saw the Dead Alewives the first time live. To me, I always say it's like the Beatles in Hamburg, Germany, because it's just like, oh my God, you can do this in comedy? Like just watching them so quick and all the weirdness. And I was like, this is like everything I want to do with my comedy. And to actually see it live with like Sean McKenna and Dan Harmon, Rob Schraub, Kurt, Peter, Bo, and Mundy.
Then you were asked to be a part of it then after a couple guys left?
And that was when Kurt left, he says, oh, I think Tom should be in it. And he got me and Eric Price in it, in the group. And, it wasn't easy. Those guys are, can be kind of standoffish. But, they were totally open to having me. And I did it for 3 or 4 years. And I don't think I was ready. But those guys, you learn just so much watching.
Well, I was going to say, if you didn't feel ready, you jump in and you learn a lot.
Yeah, and Dylan Bolin, that's the other one I should have mentioned, was Mundy, like watching Mundy and Dylan on stage and how quick they were and how like they could be so smart.
Right.
And Bo too, it's like, like Eric and I were kind of the clowns and kind of Eric can do so many great characters.
Right.
But yeah, I was just sort of like, they just made you so comfortable on stage and they took care of you. And that was...
well, it's a supportive family, that ComedySportz, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you're still I'm still friends with so many of the guys, and I think you just have that bond. Even people that I don't know that I meet like 10 years because I've done some shows at the Farina Arena.
Right.
And I meet guys through Mike Kauth or through whoever, and then never done a show with them, but I know them. And it's like you just sort of have this bond.
You're right. It's that bond of
generations of comedy sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, last game here. We're going to play a Would You Rather. And I hope these aren't too gross. I've been picking pretty gross ones lately.
All right.
Here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Would you rather go on a date to a fancy restaurant for dinner and dangle string beans from your nose for the evening? Or take your shoes off and keep them on the table next to the food?
My shoes aren't that bad. And string beans in my nose, I feel like they'd get in the way depending on what I was eating.
Could be.
Yeah, because they kind of dangle down. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know how how are the string beans in my, like I got to shove them in my nose? Are they attached? Like yeah, I guess so. Shoes on the table next to where I'm eating.
Next to where you're eating. And your lovely date would have to experience your shoes there.
Well, we're married now, so.
She experiences the shoes on the floor all the time.
Right, shoes, yeah. I guess shoes, I guess I'd go with shoes on the table. Yeah. Right. If I get to pick the shoes, I don't know.
If they're just your own, you just take them right off when you get there.
Yeah, if they're I have odor eaters in them.
So it would just be wafting odor eaters over your food.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I feel they're not that bad. I'm gonna go shoes on the table.
Shoes on the table for 100, Alex. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Tom Clark, and fitting this in. I know you're just kind of visiting for the weekend. You'll be off back to LA. This was awesome. I hope next time you come in town, we get a chance to play at
for sure.
Sports.
That would be fun.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
The ComedySportz Podcast is produced and engineered by Kyle Hanneken. Our announcer is PJ Rockwell. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Send us your favorite Would You Rather question at the ComedySportz Podcast at gmail.com. As always, I'm Christine Rollo Capriolo. Catch you next time.
The ComedySportz Podcast is an independent production made by CSz players. The views and opinions expressed by the podcast host and any guests are their own and do not represent the views and opinions of any CSz location or CSz Worldwide. Vocabulary used by the host and guests is not necessarily representative of the CSz brand.